Hey everyone, it's Bobby from Decoded here. Today I will show you every necessary step in order to deploy your Dockerized Django app online. So let's not waste any time and jump straight into it. So like always, if you haven't visited Decoding before, then please subscribe and click the bell so you're notified every time I add a video to the channel. And also on this video, drop a like and a comment because I like to have the feedback. It helps me create videos that you actually want to see. So let's bookend that and move on and start looking at the tutorial. So if you are a subscriber, you'll know that recently videos that I create always come accompanied with a tutorial on my website. We'll be following along with one of those today, and this is that tutorial. The link is at the top of the screen here, but it will always be in the description, so don't worry. This video is the last part of a small series that I put together. The first video, linked to which is at the top of the screen here, was us creating a Django app that used Celery, and Redis to perform ad hoc tasks and scheduled tasks using workers. Second video, we then Dockerized that project, and in this video we'll be making a production ready Docker container and deploying it for the world to see. So at the end of this tutorial we'll have a working app, which is something I've been wanting to do for some time now. So let's start looking at this tutorial. If you don't want to follow along, you can clone down from the Docker prod branch, and all you'll have to do is add your Google app password and change a few variables in the env file and you should be good to go. So the syllabus will be cloning down the Docker branch on the repository, because that's the last video, and we'll be moving on from that. We'll be configuring Django, so there's a few things we need to add, some directories and what have you. We'll be then configuring Docker, so we'll be creating the Docker Compose and the Docker files and Nginx and things like that. We'll be transferring everything to a virtual machine. Now, I did create a video not so long ago of how to set one up using DigitalOcean. So don't worry about that. There is a video to help you set that up. We'll be configuring the virtual machine. So we'll be installing all the necessary packages such as Nginx and bits and pieces for Postgres. We'll be adding SSL and deploying. So that is the syllabus. That's what we'll be doing. And the prerequisites. So I said a moment ago that you will need a Google app password. That is, this app is using Google to send emails. So when somebody signs up, the system, or Celery in this instance, will be using a worker to send an email to the new user to say welcome to the app. So you will need a Google app password. Now there is a link of how to set that up here. So follow that, get it set up, and you're good to go. We'll be using Docker and Docker Compose, which will need to be installed on a virtual machine. Whilst we're talking about virtual machines, this video here, I lost my train of thought. Right, this video. This will help you get a virtual machine set up on DigitalOcean. That link here, DigitalOcean, can you see it above my head? Yeah. That will give you, if you haven't already signed up, that will give you $100 of free credit. So by all means, click that, and free money can't be a bad thing, right? And it's an affiliate link, so I'll get a kickback eventually. So it's a win-win. We'll also be using a managed database service because this is a production app. So we need something robust, scalable, and secure, should we say. So there's a video here of how to set that up. And lastly, we will need a domain. Obviously, we're going to be deploying this to a domain. In this instance, it's going to be didcoding.uk, which is a domain I purchased the other week, and I've already changed and pointed the DNS servers, or the name servers, to DigitalOcean. So you will need to do that. I haven't done a tutorial on how to do that because it all depends on the registrar that you use. But essentially you need to go into the DNS settings, the name servers, and you need to point the name servers to DigitalOcean because we're using DigitalOcean for this tutorial. So they're the prerequisites. You will need those to follow along. So yeah, I've got two links here. So again, affiliate links. You can buy yours through Interserve, 123Reg. There are others available, but like I say, these links, they are affiliate links just in the interest of transparency. Okay, so setup. Firstly, let's get our code. So we need a directory in our development directory on our local machine. So let's use this here. We can copy this and go into our local directory, which for me is here. And if I put cmd, That'll open up a command prompt. Doesn't like to do that. Command prompt in the correct development directory. Right click, so that'll make a directory called did Django schedule jobs v2. It will cd into that, which we've just done, and code space period or full stop, depends where you are in the world. That will open up Visual Studio Code. I'm using Visual Studio Code as a text editor in this tutorial. So I'll click that, it'll open up Visual Studio Code, and I'll make it a little bit bigger, so don't worry about that. So this is the directory that we're in, right? So let's go back to our tutorial, and it's that'll open Visual Studio Code. It's flowing down from the Docker branch. Take this, go in Visual Studio Code, open up a terminal. In this case, I want a git bash. Right click. That'll ask me for a passphrase because my SSH key has got a passphrase. It should work. There we go. So yeah, we're cloning down, and we're cloning it with this period here, saying we're cloning it into the did Django schedule jobs. That's the directory we just created. So this is where we left off in the last video. So we've got a backend directory that contains our Django app. We've got an env template. We've got a git ignore, and then we've got a Docker compose and a README file. Okay, so we don't need that anymore. We can close that down, kill that terminal, but we do want this one. Okay, should we make that a bit bigger? How's that? So I'm using OBS Studio. I can see what you can see. So that's a bit better. I'm sure you can see that now. Right. What have we got? Django setup. So this won't take too long. We just need to add a few files. Okay, so we need a CD into the backend directory, which is a Django directory, and then CD into requirements. So we need a new requirements file. So this will extend the base.txt, and this allows us to add dependencies that are production specific. In this case, we're going to be using Green Unicorn or G Unicorn, right? So we'll be creating a file, and then we'll also be creating a media directory. Okay. So we'll take that code, we'll go into here, and we'll drop it in there. A lot of it is behind. Actually, let's make it a little smaller. Sorry, that's probably a bit better because my big fat head is in the bottom right of the screen. Right, and if we click OK there, right, okay, so we're going to back end. Let's just create this file here, sorry, directory, and in requirements is created prod, okay? Go back in here, and it's now saying to add this into backend requirements prod.txt. So copy that, back into VS Code, go into this file here, which is paste and save. So it's extending base.txt. So these will all be part of the requirements of this project, but the only difference is in production we want Green Unicorn or G Unicorn. Okay, so that's that done. Close that, we no longer need it. That's it. That's the Django setup. So we then need a Docker setup. So our project is currently configured to work in our local machine. Therefore, we want to keep our development configurations as is. Let's go ahead and create a whole bunch of files like Docker env files for our production environment, because it does need to be different in a production environment. For instance, Flower. In development, we can access the Flower dashboard at localhost on port 5555. That's how we configure this project. You can't do that in a in a production environment. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up Flower on a subdomain. So if I go into did coding and then go into our domain, we'll be using didcoding.uk. I've already set up some A records. You will need to do this, okay? So let this load up. What's it doing? There we go. It's having a moment. It might not. There we go. So you can see I've got 3 A records. So I've got didcoding.uk, and I've got www. Which is a subdomain, didcoding.uk, and then we've got flower.didcoding.uk. They're already set up, and they're already pointing to the droplet that I've already configured. So when I said I've got a video that explains how to set up a virtual machine, I've already gone through that process. I've already installed Docker, curl, Docker compose, and everything in that video on that virtual machine. So I'm already there. You will need to do that. So please go back and get your virtual machine up and running. So create files and DIRs. So what we're doing is we're copying the Docker Compose, which is the development compose, and creating a production version. We're then creating a production env file. We are making a directory called Nginx, and within that we're creating a Docker file and a custom.conf, and then we're then creating an entry point, production version, a production Docker file, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we'll take all of this and we'll go into our, I need to keep remembering to, oh, I won't like that. Let's just go with a new one. Okay. Did that work? Am I in the right, even in the right place? It looks like it did, right? So hang on, let's press enter there. So it's gone, it's followed through those commands, right? So what we've done, we've created, close that down, we've created a production Docker file. We've created a production entry point. We've got an Nginx directory here with a custom and a Docker file. We've then got a env prod, env database, and then we've got a compose prod as well. So now we've got all of the files we need for a production environment. So I don't think it actually says to, let me have a look on here. We don't really need the development stuff now, so we can remove that, but we won't. We'll just follow along with the tutorial. So, okay, so configure our production environment files. So .env.prod, as mentioned above, we're using a managed database service with DigitalOcean. You will also need a managed database service. I have a good video for this. So get that all set up. So I've already set it up. So we go back into DigitalOcean. You can see I've got a database cluster called dev. Okay, so if you click in there, it'll have all of your information that you need to connect to that database cluster right here. Don't worry, by the end of this video, I'm going to close all this down. So you know, it's all fair game. You can look at this. It won't be available at all. Good. All of the information here, you'll need it to add to the database. So the .env.prod.db, you need this information. So we've got a Postgres user, Postgres database, password, and a Postgres database. So we'll copy that. We'll go into here again, and we'll go into the env.prod.db. Completely empty, we'll add that. So we need the DigitalOcean username, password, and database. Go back into DigitalOcean. Can you see this? Shall I make it a little bit bigger for you? It's above my head there. So the username is doadmin. Copy. Username is doadmin. Paste. We're now looking for the password. Password is, you click show and then you just copy it across. And then we want the database name. So the database name is default DB. Now in this tutorial on the this here that we're following along, right at the bottom of the page, I do show you how to actually create new users using the command line, create a new database, new users, and connect to it that way. And in that case, you'd use the new username, password, and so on and so forth. But we're just going to use the default for this tutorial. But you know, feel free to create a new user and give them the right permissions and what have you for the database. So that is now the database details done. Scroll down. We're then it's telling us to play around with the .env.prod file. So this has just been copied straight across from the development env. So you can see here we need to change the engine, so the SQL engine, and this is important. You need to remember to do this. So we go into the env.prod file, this one here. We need to change debug to 0 because this will be production. It will not. We do not want debug on, and it will be productions 1. We have these in the env file because we're doing some bits and pieces in the settings.py file. So depending on these settings, certain things trigger, especially if you're using different, serving up static files using a S3 bucket, for instance. You might want to use different static settings in production mode. Secret key, change that to whatever your secret key would be. You need to add an email here. So make sure there's no white space, by the way, that doesn't like that. So do not reply email address. This is going to be bobby@didcoding.com. App password. We'll come back to that in a second, but that is the Google app password. Do you know what? Let's set one up quickly. So you need to go into your account, you need to go into security, you need to go into app passwords. Sign in and set a new one up. This is going to be for mail and it's going to be for Windows computer. Generate. That is my app password. Okay. Copy. Done. Close that down. Go back into the project. Add that there. Okay. That is our app password. Google app password. Then the engine. Go back into here. Was copy. We're using a different engine to development, okay? So we're using PsychoPG2. Then we've got the database, the user, and the password. So we can just copy that across here. So user is do admin, so we want that there. Production is default DB. And password is this bit of gobbledygook here. So let's copy password. What we also need is SQL port equals save. So we need a DigitalOcean port and host. Okay, so you get that back from here. So it's 25060. 25060. And the host is this long piece here. Okay. Okay, so we can move that over to the project. So it's no longer DB. We add that in there, save. So just have a quick look, make sure we haven't missed anything. It's probably a good habit just to remove the white space here as well. Save. So debug, we're no longer in debug mode. So it's a Boolean. So 1 is true, 0 is false. Production, 1 is true. So we're in production mode. Secret key, change that to the one that you get from your Django project. Do not reply email, so that'll be the email that you want to be sending from. So when somebody signs up, there'll be an email filed from bobby@decoding.com and it will be using the API for the Google. And that's why we've got the Google app password. And then this is all of our database settings that goes straight through to the settings.py file from our database cluster on DigitalOcean. So that's what we've just done. Wonderful. Then we've got, don't forget to change these details. We've just done that. Don't forget to change these details. Right, I've got these in here. Django allowed hosts. So we will add that. That will be decoding dot UK. So that's allowed hosts. And lastly, before, come on, there we go. Sorry, my phone is on airplane mode. And it is saying add a Flower user and Flower password. Do you know what? We'll add them, but I was spending a lot of time trying to get this to work and I couldn't, but I will probably do that in a future video. So we will add Bobby here and we will add password there, right? So the idea of this is when you log on to flower.decoding.uk, you will be able to then, there'll be an authorization. So if you don't put the right username and password combination, you won't be able to access the dashboard, which is what you want, right? You don't want any Tom, Dick and Harry to visit your Flower dashboard, which contains all of your tasks and whether or not they're a success, and it'll have all of the tracebacks and what have you. So that's what we're doing there, although it doesn't actually work, but we'll wire that in and fix that in a future video. Okay, right, so Docker Compose. So our current Docker Compose prod file has been a copy from our development file. This needs to change as we're using different .env files, for instance, and we need some Nginx settings. We'll also be setting up a custom network. Read more about networks in this video, and we'll help you set one up. You guessed it, here, right? So first, change the version from 3.8 to 3. Let's go ahead and change this one here to 3. Save. And then it's asking us to change the database container to this, as you can see here. So all of this is the same. The only difference is we are now picking up from a different env file, because that used to be .env. It's now .env.prod. Actually, on the other file, you can see what it looks like here, rather than, there we go. So the environment was different. We were actually hard coding in the database. Now we're picking it up from an env file. Okay, so we can copy that, paste that there, and then we've added networks. So we'll create this network before we've finished. So this should be the same network for most of them. We're then updating the app. So let's copy all of this across. Again, we've got volumes here. So volumes are very important. It means that that data will persist outside of the container. And we're calling this container a name, which will be, you can see at the end here, we've got prod, whereas before we didn't. So the containers are actually named consistently with the project now. What have we got? So the Docker file has changed to .prod, and the env file is env.prod. So we're having to change all of this because the production environment has changed as well. Okay, so we don't need the terminal for a few minutes. So let's just go and change app, save, change Redis. You see what I'm doing here. So this is saying ports, but on this one it's saying exposed port 6379. Same again with the network. Save, Celery worker. Let's change that. Okay. Again, all of this is the same. Okay, so we're just looking at the context is backend. It depends on database, Redis, and app. We're looking at a different env file, and the network is main prod. Okay, we then got a Celery beat setting. Oh, I just opened up Adobe. I do apologize. Celery beat. So this will be handling the scheduled tasks. So the 30-second function that we built. Then we've got flower. And that's where it ends on the development setup. But because we are going in a production environment, we will be adding Nginx. So a little bit different on flower. So this is where I couldn't get it to work. So we have, again, ports 5555. We'll be adding all of this into an Nginx file on the virtual machine. But what's different here is this basic auth, I can't get the variables to work, or I just run out of time looking at it. So we'll actually hard code it in. So we'll have Bobby, and we'll just put password there, so that when somebody tries, this is just basic authentication. So when somebody tries to visit the subdomain, they'll actually be presented with a sign in option. Right, okay, that's Celery, that's flower. We've then got Nginx. Okay, so this is all new. Okay, so the container, keep it consistent, we'll have prod there. So restart always, build.nginx, which is the directory that we added earlier. The ports are 8080 because the 80 will already be taken, we found earlier. Again, the volumes, again, static volumes, so they will persist, and it depends on app. So nothing fancy going on there. And then lastly, we want volumes in the network. So these are the volumes now. So we've got static volumes, media volumes, and the Postgres data. So that's what will persist. And then we've got networks, which is the main prod and the driver bridge. Okay, so again, read more up on networks in your own time. So that is the compose file done. So now we want to mess around with the Nginx Docker file. So just copy all of this, go into Nginx, go into the Docker file, and you want to make sure you save over that where it says echo. Oh, just delete, save. You can see that it's adding custom.conf, which will be in here. Okay, to the etc nginx conf.d. So that's what it's doing on there. We need to add this to the custom conf. Okay, so upstream is Django app name. Server is 8000, which is standard for the for Django. Then we've got a proxy path. So this is the Django app, HTTP. We're listening for 8080, and then we've got the location for static. We're not serving up static files using S3 buckets or anything like that. It's all going to be managed through Nginx. That's why we've got it in there. And we've got client max body size is 2000 M. So get that in there. This is all the setup that you need for the Nginx within the container itself. There was a little bit more we need to do on a virtual machine. Okay, so then we've got a Docker file and endpoint. So copy all of this and add this to your new endpoint. You'll notice that in the development one, we're actually flushing the database, making migrations and migrating. We don't do that in production. You don't want to be doing that in a production environment. You want to be doing that manually. And I'll show you how to do that. So that's the entry point, and then we want the builder, okay? It's not, the builder's not massive. Sorry, the Docker file for production isn't, it's a big change compared to the development one. So we're doing a multi-step build here. So we're creating a builder. We're installing all of the, we've got the envs here. We're installing all of the necessary dependencies for the project. Then we're running this command here. So we're getting the requirements from prod.txt. And then we're pulling from Python 3.9. And we're going through all of this. So we're making a directory home app. We're creating a user. We are then adding the user to the group. We are then creating an env called home and app home. We're just going through, again, go through this and go through all of the steps. You can probably work out what I'm doing here. Like we're installing all the dependencies here. We're adding the right kind of permissions to the home file. And it's saying adding all the permissions to the entry point file. So that's what we're doing in Docker. I don't want to spend too much time going through that. It's kind of over and above this tutorial. I just want to show you every step that's necessary. Okay. Okay, so we can now transfer, that's the project, right? So that's as far, all intents and purposes, that's the project done. Now what you can do, this which is not in the tutorial, is you can delete all of the old bits and pieces. We don't need them now. So we can delete that. Don't need this one. We don't need that one. Cool. Wonderful. Let's move that across. Let's give us a bit more space in the terminal because we are going to need that now. And so we are now ready to move our project to our production server. Copy our project over to your virtual machine. No, you will need to have your virtual machine IP address and have it all set up and ready with Docker and Docker Compose. Watch this video here to learn how to do that and a step-by-step guide of how to set up a virtual machine on DigitalOcean. SSH to your virtual machine and create a project directory. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's connect to a host, demo. Hopefully that'll work. They might ask me for my code. No, we're good to go. So if we open up, okay, have I already set up? Probably already set up a user called Bobby. We'll have a little look. Authorized query. Again, it doesn't matter if you saw that because we'll be closing this project down at the end of it. So let me actually. Sorry, one second. Let's open it, connect to a host, just connect to another one. Let's open it. I just want to double check, make sure we've got Bobby already set up. So what you want to look at is home. There is a Bobby in there. Brilliant. Okay. So have I already? No, I haven't. Right, this is great. So if I open up this, so you want to CD into home with Bobby, you'd CD into the user that you've created. Your name could be Frank, right? So you want to make a directory called Docker. Yeah, you can call it whatever you like, really, but let's make a dir. We put ls now, that should be Docker, which is good. You can now easily do this by adding the following to your terminal. So that might work in this. You might need a Ubuntu or Linux server up and running. So let's have a look. No, I don't want it in there. I'm actually SSH'd into the server. So I want to open up a new terminal. Let's open up that one. Okay, so it's using SCP. It might not work in this. I'll probably need to open it in Linux, but we'll work that in a second. So can you see that on my screen? Yeah, you can see that. Okay, so we're using SEP and we're copying over everything from the home directory, looking at backend, which is the whole Django app, the Nginx directory, and all the environment variables that we just moved. You see, we're only moving over the production versions. The only thing you need to change here is root will remain the same, but you need the IP address of your virtual machine. So if you go into DigitalOcean, the virtual machine is this. Oh, sorry, I apologize. I destroyed a droplet earlier. There we go. So it's this here. So that's the IP address that you need. Sorry, I've got a lot of these open. So remove your remote IP address, and path to project would be, in this case, it was home. Bobby Docker. Do you know what? I'm going to copy that command because if it doesn't work, I'll open up Ubuntu and get it working through that. So root password, you would have set this up when setting up the virtual machine. No such directory. So let's open up Ubuntu. Okay, that's open, it's in the right directory. Let's copy or paste that across. You can't see all of it, but yes, and this looks to be working. Password, happy days, right? It just needed to be on Linux. It wasn't a command that it liked on a normal terminal. So you can see that's gone through and it's just copied everything across from the project over to the new virtual machine. Okay, so if we now go back into the virtual, close that one down, if we open up this one, you can see now that in Docker, we've got all of the projects, okay, which is exactly what we're expecting. We've got the SSH bar with the authorized keys. That's what allows us to SSH into it. And then we've got all of this, which comes straight out of the box. Okay, cool. This is all working well, which I'm happy with. If we go back into this, so we now need to configure our virtual machine with a few other bits and pieces that are over and above what's in the other setup. So we need a sudo apt update, and we need to bring in and update some Python, pip, some dev, some Postgres bits and pieces, and Nginx. And also we'll then bring in, using Snap, the certbot, because we'll be using certbot to get an SSL certificate. So when you visit our app, it will be HTTPS. Copy this. Drop that in our virtual machine here. There you go. Go ahead and it will update sudo's apt. And yes, there. Abort. What have we done? What have we done? All packages are up to date. Okay, didn't like that command. What's going on? Let's have a look. Let's put this in. After this operation, 227 megabytes of additional disk space will be used. Upgrade 72 nearly installed, removed. Happy days, there we go. Worried I missed something. Right, that's going to take a couple of seconds. I'm going to pause that and come back when it's done. All done. Right, okay, so that's all of the packages installed. We then need snap install certbots. Let's get that in. That'll take a second as well. We might let that do what it's got to do. So now we need to set up a firewall. So we will copy both of these commands and drop them in here. Hoping you can see that all okay. Just put yes there. Firewall is active and enabled on system startup. Excuse me. So we now need to open up a nano and create a sites available file for Nginx for didcoding.uk. Okay, so we'll copy that. This will open up a nano. Okay, this allows us to add straight into a file from our command line, right? So we'll copy all of this. We'll add that into the nano and Control S to save, Control X. Well, I won't press that yet because I want to show you. Actually, I can do that from the screen. So what we've done, we've created an Nginx configuration for a server. So the server name in this case is decoding.uk, but also we've got a subdomain www. So add that in there as well. It's decoding.uk. And then we've got location, and it's got this is the necessary setup that you need for the Django app. So it's localhost 8080 because that's what we're looking for. And that's actually it's quite lightweight. So we'll set up another nano now for flower.decoding.co.uk. Open that, and this one's going to be a different port, so just make sure you don't use the same one. It's this one here, which is 555. You can see the server name is flower.decoding.uk. So copy that, dump that in here, Control S, Control X, that's it. That's about right at the top of the screen, not that that will last at all. So we can now link both of our configuration files to the site. You can do that, copy that there actually, and dump it there. There we go. So that both of those worked. So you will be able to actually, no, I'll show you them in a second. It's fine. You can now test Nginx with sudo nginxt. Hopefully that's worked. There you go, syntax is okay, configuration file test is successful. That's what you want to see, okay? You can now add Nginx, there's a typo there, to our firewall. So we need a system restart, sudo systemctl restart Nginx, and then you want to add or remove 8000 and add the full Nginx pack to the firewall. So we're not going to have any problems there, okay? There we go, rule added, that's what you want to see. Right, and we can now deploy to HTTP. So to do this, use the following commands. Now you need to be in the right directory because this Docker compose file is in Docker. So cd to Docker, right? cd Docker. So put ls, it's got the Docker compose file there. You can see, I just pointed at the screen like a plonker. Docker compose.prod, so that's what we'll be calling. So we put Docker compose docker compose.prod.yml upd double b. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay, it's going to take a few seconds to go ahead and do everything it needs to do. I'm going to pause it again. Okay, so all of the containers are up and running. It won't work though, because if you remember in the entry point, we removed the migrate and everything. We also need to collect static as well, because Nginx is serving up static files from directories that aren't there. When you run collect static, it will create those and move across all of the admin files and CSS and everything else, right? So if you go back in here, you can execute. So you can go into one of the containers and execute Python code with this command. So it's docker exec -it, then you name the container and bash, and this will allow you to get into it. So we can see we're in web. If you put ls, you see we've got the manage.py file, we've got the project and everything else. So that's exactly what we wanted to see. And so we can just go Python manage.py, and if everything is set up well with the database, we should be all right. Wonderful, right? So that has actually worked. We managed to migrate everything over to the new database that is, or the cluster that we've set up on DigitalOcean, which is fantastic. Now, Python manage.py collect static. Now this should work. It would ask me yes or no. No, it didn't. Right, so it's just moved 129 static files across to, if you remember, this is what we named in the compose file, home, app, web, static files, and that's also in Nginx. Oh, you can see up here, look. There we go. So home, app, web, static files, media files. Yeah. So happy days. That looks like that's worked. We can now exit, so we don't need to be in there anymore. And clear. Okay. Now, because we've just done that, Celery Beat won't be working. Celery Beat requires certain tables to be in the database for it to even function. So if we went on there now, it just wouldn't work. So we need to restart that container, right? So docker restart Celery. Now do what it's got to do. Brilliant. And that's that. We now need to add SSL. So secure an SSL certificate for our domains and subdomain. So make sure the DNS records are all present and correct. DNS records, they're here. Okay, so go into domain on DigitalOcean. Make sure you've got the A records. So this is what certbot will be looking for. Okay. So we will sudo certbot Nginx, and then we've got decoding.uk, www.decoding.uk, and flower.decoding.uk. So anyone who visits any one of those domain configurations will be met with an HTTPS. So I'll have an SSL certificate. Hopefully it will work. Enter email. So bobby@didcoding.com. Yes. Would you be willing once the certificate? Yeah, we'll have some of that as well. Requesting a certificate for decoding.uk into more domains. Successfully deployed certificate. I was worried there. It didn't work the other day. And also, if this is wrongly configured, don't just keep making that call, the sudo certbot, because in production, if you're not using their in production, if you keep making calls, I think you make 50 calls a day, and if you exceed that, it'll just block you and stop you. It won't allow you to even make that call and apply for the certificate. So please don't do that. But that's worked. It would have now changed the configuration in the Nginx files, which I'll show you before we're done anyway. So we now need to do a dry run. So if we do this, this will then allows the system to renew automatically, renew the certificates. Don't have to do it manually. So simulate and renew for an existing certificate, decoding.uk to others. So that worked. Brilliant. So finished. Let's check that our project is running correctly. Visit your domain in your web browser. With any luck, your website will be fully functional and with a valid SSL certificate. So let's go Control-Shift-N for incognito. If we go into didcoding.uk, voila, it worked. It's all good, right? Hopefully it worked. So if I go to, you can see it's got a little lock there. That means SSL. It's all working, HTTPS. And also, if we then put flower.decoding, it will then come up with this. So I can't visit this unless I put Bobby. Did I just put? I think I might just put password. Sign in. Brilliant. So that now allows us to visit the dashboard. This is the worker that we've set up. Okay, so it looks like it's working. Succeeded 6. So that'll be our 30-second function. That means Celery beat is working. I don't even need to go into the container. It's working, right? So every 30 seconds, another one will appear. So that leaves one more thing to test. .uk, the sign up. So when I sign up, I should get an email. Hopefully that password works. So sign up. It's very, very quick, because what we're doing, we're not going through the function of creating an email within the request itself. We're removing it and throwing it towards Celery. Okay. So we're going to Flower, update, users.task create email. It's saying that it was a success. So if I now go and check my emails, not in incognito because it'll ask me for my password and everything else. If I just go back into a normal browser, should have all my sign-in credentials. There we go. So if I go into mail, there we go. So it's saying I've got a security alert there with a bit of a problem because I was looking for an app password or just a notification to say that an app password has been created. But if I go in here, this is the email that was sent using the app password. Hi, Bobby@didcoding.com. Welcome to our site. So that is perfect. So if we go back and have a look at this again, this is, if we keep updating it, there you go. So every 30 seconds, a new function is being called. That works perfectly. I'm so happy with that. Okay. So if we go back into, sorry, let's have a look over here. Okay, so where are we now? So it's finished. Right. it works. So one last thing, we said, look, you can also create users and databases in DigitalOcean. You can go into, so we use the standard admin database, but whatever it was in here, what was it? It was do admin and default DB. But what you can do, you can create new users just in the user interface here. You can also do it following this tutorial as well. So you can use PSQL and then use the username, host, port, database, and then you can create a database with these commands here and connect to that database in the env.prod.db. So we've just used the standard one, but I know in a production environment, it's not always going to be handy, right? So you need to add all of that, restart stuff, migrate, collect static, and all of a sudden you'll be on a new database. So that is it. I mean, essentially, I think we're finished here. I was also saying that you need to restart the Celery beat. So that is it. We managed to get through it. How long has it been? It's been not even an hour, right? So we have just created a production-ready Docker container, and we've actually deployed onto a domain. It's got SSL. We're using Celery Beat and Flower to manage tasks that are scheduled and ad hoc. What else are we doing? We're using a managed database. So it's not just a straight out the box. We're using a managed database to make sure that it's secure, scalable, and all that other fancy stuff. So this, for all intents and purposes, this is a launched, a deployed app. It's all good to go. There's nothing else that you could or would really want to change at this point. Actually, that's a lie. There's the only other thing that you could do is you could set up spaces, and actually I might do another video about that. So you can set up spaces on DigitalOcean, set up an API key, and then you would change the static file settings in the Django project and in the Docker files so that rather than static files being served to the project via Nginx, they're actually served via a CDN through spaces on DigitalOcean, which is actually an S3 bucket, an Amazon S3 bucket. So that's what you could do in a real production environment. But for all intents and purposes, like I said, if I go to decoding.uk, it's up and running. I'm really happy with that. So that's it. I'm happy I've made this. I've been wanting to do it for some time. I've had a lot of fun doing it, but that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.